Do you remember when we were at the hearing?
Yes.
And I'm thumbing through this thing going,
Yes.
I know it's here somewhere.
Yes, I do remember that. I know it's in the chapter, Golden, is it called Golden Moor? Is like a page or two before the poem, right?
It's right before the poem.
The page before? Oh, it's so peaceful in your backyard.
I know, it's just, I am just blessed, let me tell you.
You
Fortunate. The what I quoted was, there must be a few Indiana Jones types out there like me, ready to throw a bedroll in the pickup and start searching, with a reasonable chance of discovering a treasure chest containing more than 20 troy pounds of gold. For me, it was always the thrill of the chase. What do you think?
So, will you talk about the spontaneity of that that was such an emotional and a powerful statement in your closing argument. Do you want to talk about the spontaneity of it and what you felt in the courthouse or in the courtroom?
Sure. We were coming to the end of that trial, and I had thought that I might quote something that Jamie McCracken had said, which seemed he was making some critical remarks about Forest, and they really were reflective of what I thought they were. He was talking about himself, McCracken was, ironically, and it was describing his behavior, just perfectly. But as I sat there, I thought, I don't want to end this with the words of some, bizarre, crazed searcher. I thought, I want to end it with Forrest's words. I wanted to refer to something Forrest said, and I hadn't read the book in a long time, but I remembered that somewhere just before the poem or right around it, he stated what the purpose was of putting this in there. And I flipped through while I was waiting to make my closing to that page, and it was exactly what I was thinking of. And I wanted to recall what Forrest said in the book he wanted to do, and that was it exactly, was to inspire people to get out and see the world that we live in. And that was how he had done it. And it was pretty moving for me, because it's been a long haul for the family, and for, you have a client who's dealing with year after year just ridiculous, bizarre, hateful, greedy people filing lawsuits and making claims, and I didn't want to end it there. I wanted to end it somewhere else, and that's exactly where I wanted to end it. So it's pretty moving for me.
So when your voice cracked and it sounded like you were crying, which made everybody in the courtroom except probably Jamie cry, did you know at the time the effect that it had of all of us in the room? I mean, did you have any idea what that did to all of us?
I was just trying to keep it together for myself.
Yeah.
I mean, because I had no idea that it would be that moving for me personally, but it was, and it was because I care about Forrest's family, and and I really enjoyed working with him. So it was touching for me.
So when I first talked to you about making this video, the idea I had in my head about how I thought that I needed closure, and then I got to New Mexico and it's like, no, it's not closure I seek anymore, it's remembrance. Do you have anything that you want to say on camera that reflects the way you think or remember? So you weren't a searcher per se, like most of us.
But never a searcher.
But right. But yet you had a connection with Forrest.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, so do you want to talk anything about that and what remembrance is for you?
It's a couple of things that I think come to mind. One is I will never forget when he first came to me. This was back, it was like in 2017, and there was a lawsuit filed in Colorado by this lawyer who was representing. And when he walked into my office, the one thing I remember was he's here thinking I'm one of my brothers, and he made a mistake. And I'm certain to this day that he thought I was one of my brothers, because I have two brothers who are lawyers, and they're in the same building, and it's a small town, and it would be very easy to confuse us. I mean, to this day, people still confuse us walking down the street. So I remember that because it was such a happy mistake. I got the chance to do something that, no lawyers get to do. I mean, you don't get out of law school and work on cases where somebody's hidden a treasure somewhere in the Rockies, and it just doesn't happen. And so that's one of it, just the happy mistake of being able to work on it. But then the second thing is, Forrest himself. I knew him growing up. Wasn't, I went to school with his daughters and that sort of thing. But getting the chance to represent him and get to know him a little bit. I don't think that many people got to know him really well. He was so engaging, so charming, so interesting to be around. I didn't become friends with him in the sense that, the few times that I got to sit and chat for a little while, I really I could see how people were just mesmerized by him, because he just was a man, when you were in his presence, a man who just seemed goodwill. And I would have to run up to his house during the pandemic when all this was going on, because he wasn't going out much. He quit going out at all. And one of the things that he said that I'll always remember, and I think it was just sort of typical of the way he spoke. I would go and we'd talk about what was going on and have to make a decision about where we were, what we had to do. And and this stuff, obviously, this was after the chest had been found. There were 2 lawsuits pending, and we were dealing with, we were having to deal with Jack, and when I say having to deal with him, he was a perfectly fine, good guy. I mean, I didn't have much, but we were dealing with this kind of tumultuous time and having to make decisions. And so I got up to see him at his house, and we would talk. He would listen. He would make his decision, whatever needed to be made, and give me the direction that he wanted to go on whatever it was we were talking about. And I was leaving this one particular time, and he said, I always feel so much better when you leave. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, that's ambiguous enough to be a compliment. Or,
yeah.
And it was just the way he talked. And, I felt like, because, he was always engaging that he was, the implication was that I always felt better about what we had talked about when I left. But, the underlying opposite inference could be, well, I'm just so glad when you get the hell out of my house. He didn't say it that way, but that's kind of the way he spoke.
And I think somewhere during the interviews or sometime he actually came out and basically said he hated lawyers too. So,
but he had a healthy disrespect for the law.
Yeah. So going back to the first day he walked into your office in 2017, what was his demeanor like?
It was always the same, except for it got a little different at the end. He was calm. He didn't go on and on about things, and he was not upset. But he certainly did not want this to be the norm. But he was calm and charming, and that was kind of it. That was the way he was always. Toward the end, before he died, there was a more concern that he wanted to make sure that his family wasn't going to have to deal with this forever. So he was constantly trying to figure out how do we, what was the best thing for his family as time went on.
Right. So the day. Well, do you want to talk at all on camera about the events that took place from the time that Jack called Forrest Friday night, June 5th, said he had found the treasure, and then or an email, and I believe Forrest replied, send the pictures, and I believe Jack did that same night, which is in the emails now that have been published. So can you, or do you want to talk about actually what transpired? And then before I forget, because there was no precedent ever where a lawyer needed to represent people in a treasure hunt, do you think this will actually ever go into books? Will they ever teach this? What you created? I mean, what you did in the family and Jack and whatever?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so, because it's not something that ends up in in some sort of legal journal. There isn't a written decision about things, and the legal issues were not. They didn't end up in courtrooms where you would have to try the legal issues that were of interest to somebody teaching. The fascinating thing about it from a lawyer's standpoint is just the factual setting of, here's somebody hid a treasure and somebody found the treasure and dozens of other people said they found it too.
Yeah, but just think what you had to do from the time that Fenn called you and said, the treasure's been found. I think this changes things, or something similar to those words. You had to come up with now what to do. In other words, Jack couldn't take that treasure back to Fenn's house. You had to come up with the plan. Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
What you did?
Forrest had been... I hadn't talked to Forrest on a regular basis because in late 2019, I believe, or maybe early 2020, maybe December or January, right around 19, the change in the year there, the lawsuits had stopped, and we had gotten rid of the most recent one had been filed, in which Brian Erskine tried to intervene, but he was unsuccessful because we got the lawsuit dismissed. And so I hadn't talked to him in quite some time about, there wasn't anything to talk about, and he got served by Brian Erskine on June 4th.
Right.
And he came down to my office, and it was sort of matter of fact, kind of, can you help me with this? And I had actually pulled down the lawsuit when he called me about it, and so I had it in my hand when he came by with the summons and that sort of thing. He got served on the 4th, and I thought, okay, well, this is more of the same. And Brian Erskine sued in Arizona, and so there was some strategic stuff to do, but it was no chest had been found. Well, the next day he gets informed by Jack, and the emails are in the record now. Dear Mr. Fenn, I think I've found some of your property.
Right.
And Forrest was, in his inimitable fashion, he sent an email saying, hey, somebody's found the chest. I think this changes things. Yeah, I was like, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly, and for me, it's no little bit embarrassing that I hadn't even thought about it, because I didn't think anybody was ever going to find it. I mean,
none of us did.
Yeah, I mean,
including Forrest.
So when somebody found the chest, I was like, oh my God, I better read the book. I mean, I hadn't read the book up until that time. I had not read it, and there was no reason for me to read it, because I wasn't a searcher. I wasn't enthralled in, I mean, I was always an outdoor person. I didn't need the chase to get me off the couch. I mean, and go out hiking and, look kind of like all of that. So my interest in this was, it was interesting to work on the case, but no chest had been found, and you had crazy people making crazy allegations and that sort of thing. But now all of a sudden, oh my God, there's a lawsuit pending. this guy's found the chest, and then another lawsuit was filed the next Monday by Barbara Anderson. And so that weekend was a very intense weekend of trying to figure out all the implications of, okay, so there's these lawsuits. I knew that Barbara was going to file a lawsuit because she had already indicated, and there was some indication, I remember, that it was being done. And I think there was press reports of things like that over that weekend. And so that weekend was one of the most intense weekends of my whole practice in, the practice of law. No idea. There's no roadmap for what to do. And then Jack's having found it, and he tells Forrest, I said, well, I hadn't heard Forrest since he said, I think this changes things. Like, it was probably Saturday morning. Hadn't heard from him all weekend.
Right.
So I called him on Sunday on my way back from, I had been working, and I said, so what's going on? And he said, oh, Jack's on his way down here. I was like, what? It became very clear to me that there was no way. I mean, Jack coming to Santa Fe with a chest, they were going to have just a reunion at his house. And I said, no, I don't. I mean, that was like, I was adamant about not having that happen. I mean, for Forrest, it was just sort of the natural thing to do.
Of course.
But from a legal standpoint, I thought,
right,
if Jack shows up at the house with the chest in his possession, people will say it was never gone.
Right. Exactly.
And so made sure that didn't happen, and I made sure that they didn't ever that they didn't meet until Jack had a lawyer, because he'd already been sued.
Right. Darn.
Yeah.
And then how long did it take for Jack to get Tom?
It was that week. So I met Jack on Monday in my office, and understandably he was not happy.
Yeah.
I mean, he came down to meet Forrest. I mean, he'd thrown his life into this for 2 years.
Exactly.
I say thrown his life in. He was pretty intense about what he was doing, from the emails. I mean, and this was, now all of a sudden this is a legal matter. I mean, this was, and so of necessity we had to do what we needed to do to make sure that there was absolutely, you could protect the authenticity of everything that was going on. And so he hired Tom, I think, pretty quickly, either Monday or Tuesday of that week that he came, that he was here.
Right. And Tom, I'm assuming, had heard of Forest Fenn and the treasure hunt and everything, right? Or not?
Tom's practiced law here in Santa Fe for, I don't know, maybe probably longer than I have, maybe as long as I have, 30 some years, and he's at a very prominent law firm, and it's a small town, so I'm sure I only learned this afterwards, not before. I think Tom maybe knew Kelly.
Oh, okay.
And their kids are probably all, they probably knew each other. It's a small town.
Right, exactly.
I mean, a small town. So, but he didn't know Forrest very well. I don't even remember if he had ever met Forrest. If he had, it had been, like people meet people in a small town, who they are and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But it was, Tom was not Forrest's lawyer, and Tom didn't represent the family, and Tom didn't have intimate knowledge of the, the chase, or, all the stuff that had gone on at all.
Yeah. So back when everyone could finally get together, and it's the picture that the Chase community eventually ended up seeing, where it's Forrest, all the chest is there open, the items are on the table, Forrest has the bracelet. What was Forrest's demeanor like that day? So a lot of us,
it was a great occasion.
A lot of us, I mean, in the 2019, I think October interview he did with Dale, Forrest is talking about he's sick of all the emails he wants out, which meant out of getting so many emails, but he was definitely sort of getting over it. And I think I actually put on YouTube once a piece of that interview where Forrest actually said he hoped that the finder would not come forward, would remain anonymous, put it under his bed for 30 days, and then sell everything piecemeal. Well, obviously that is not what happened. So I was just wondering, because Forrest seemed sort of negative about a finder back then and what could happen. And then Jack finds it, says, I'm Jack Stoof, here it is. So it was the opposite of what Forrest talked to Dale about in 2019.
Yeah, and I had no idea that any of that had gone on, because that wasn't relevant to my representation.
Yes.
It wasn't, and it wasn't. I wasn't going through his emails. He, as you said, he didn't like lawyers, and so I was not in there rooting around in his business and what was going on. I mean, the interviews that you're talking about, I didn't even know had taken place, because they weren't part of what I needed to do,
Exactly.
and I wasn't involved in. I wasn't a enthusiastic follower of the chase. I was representing him.
Yes.
I needed a lawyer, and I was doing the legal business, and so I didn't even know that those interviews had taken place, or that clearly those emails existed that came out in the lawsuit.
Right.
Period.
Yes. And the only reason that Dale was actually even interviewing Forrest then was because Dale was writing his biography over all the years, I guess, that Dale was in the chase. And I think that was just part of the interview process that Dale was doing, just to collect as much footage from Forrest and, his thoughts and everything for this biography. So I think that's why they had talked so candidly during that time. But anyway, so in the picture that was published, it looked like Forrest was just in heaven. Like he got to touch that stuff again. Like he really loved it.
Yeah, it was a joyous occasion, as joyous occasion as it could be.
Right.
Really as a joyous an occasion it could be, with 2 lawsuits pending and lawyers involved and, all of that stuff. It truly was. And there was just from my observations, a great affinity between the two of them that day, and, and when they were, each other's presence. And, I think genuinely Forrest was happy and he wanted to meet the guy who figured it out, or the person who figured it out. And it was really cool. There was really, as I said, with all that was going on, it was a pretty incredible moment. And those pictures, I think, reflect it. And having Forrest go through and lay all that stuff out there after 10 years, and it's pretty incredible.
Are you the one that took the pictures that got posted?
Yeah, I took the video.
Yeah. So the still pictures that they put on Dale's site, you were, okay, just for the record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I say that because there's been so much speculation about it out there. I mean, it's not really meaningful speculation, but those are authentic, genuine, untouched,
unphotoshopped, nothing. They are the real deal. Exactly.
They were real time, and they exactly there, and that is Tom's office, not my office.
Right. Exactly.
And,
So what can you say that can help give people closure to, let's just say, 9 Mile Hole, which basically, so to be clear, you never said in the trial, at Jamie's trial, McCracken's trial, you never said Jack found it at 9 Mile Hole.
I did not.
But the emails that were presented during that trial, and that are public to anybody can get the transcript, I think, right, to the trial. If they fill out the right paperwork, the form, anybody can get it,
transcribed.
Right?
Someone has to pay for the transcription. It's not recorded.
Right, but it can be attained. It is a public record if people want to go through the right procedure, right? And in the court, in the trial, there were a lot of Jack's emails that were read, and he definitely, in the ones that were read, was searching 9 Mile Hole.
That's what he said.
That's what Jack is saying, right?
Yeah.
And those obviously were authentic, undoctored emails. because they
Yeah.
were in a court of law, right?
Right. I
So,
mean,
that's the real deal.
Yeah, they were produced in that lawsuit by us to Mr. McCracken.
Do you have? Is there anything that you can say that? I don't know. So I guess people like me that want it to be 9 Mile Hole, or have reason to be 100% certain that it is 9 Mile Hole. Is there anything that can be said to confirm it?
I'm not in a position to confirm anything about where it was found. My whole thing in presenting those emails was in contrast to Mr. McCracken and his emails and all of that. I wanted to show that this guy who's now publicly come out and said, I found it, and I wanted to show his journey in terms of communicating with Forest. And in his emails, he talks about where he is searching and what his questions are and what his frustrations are. And probably like hundreds of other searchers who communicated with Forest all the time.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like he's just like any other searcher that was out there.
Right. Yes.
But in terms of closure, Jack and Forest had an agreement that they would keep his identity and the location of the find private, and Forrest did his best to live up to both of those, and in fact, he fought the disclosure, but then he passed away, and then that eventually, Jack's identity was probably going to come out, but there are legal issues surrounding somebody saying where it was. I haven't said where it was, and Jack hasn't said where it was as far as I know, and the Forest Fenn estate hasn't said where it was, and nobody's confirmed where it was, other than to say that it was found in the state of Wyoming.
Exactly.
And you ask about closure, and I can tell you that Forrest signed those affidavits in the Erskine case in large part, to give people, a large sector of the community, some closure about it. Look, it wasn't found in these other places, and it was found in Wyoming. And, he says I think he said in his, on Dale's site, that he and Jack had agreed to say that. Well, in the affidavits, he doesn't say we agreed to say that. He says it was found there.
Right, exactly.
And it was found where I left it, all of those things. But in the I think on Dale's blog, he said we agreed to. Well, that agreement to do that was simply because he had already agreed to keep the location private.
Right.
And so he felt an absolute obligation to check with Jack and say, I want to do this because I'm getting inundated by people who really would like to have this concluded for them. And I mean, there were people who had, their saws were in New Mexico, Colorado, Montana, and Wyoming. And so for those people who solutions were not in Wyoming, they were elsewhere, he wanted to give people that closure and say, hey, look, it was in Wyoming.
Yes. Yeah, right.
And beyond that, I mean, I'm not in a position to give anybody any more closure. I can say Forrest was amazed that people, after it was found, that it's like, well, okay, get on with your lives, kind of, not in a snotty way, but just kind of like, he was kind of nonplussed about, he's scratching his head. Well, why are people still, I mean, the chest has been found, there's pictures, there's this, there's, and I've come out and said it was in Wyoming. Why the continued stuff? And so, I mean, we know why, because the lawsuits are evidence of why.
Yeah, for sure. So remember a few weeks ago, after Rudy found the Nook log, in the trees across from Fenn Rock, across the Madison River at 9 Mile Hole. And I created a Google Earth map with labels for the people in the chase that have never been there, that didn't understand. The GPS coordinates of where Rudy found the nook log were listed there. I sent that to you, Tom, and Jack, and I asked that it be, and along with Rudy's video of the actual nook log itself. So, and I asked that it be sent to Sarah Davis in the Yellowstone Park Chief of Rangers or whatever. And my understanding is that they didn't care that the searchers believed that that's where it was. It's not the same as getting Jack to confirm it. Do I have that sort of correct?
I never talked to her, so
okay.
I don't know. I didn't talk to her after you sent us that email. I don't know if I didn't send it on to her, and I don't know whether Tom sent it on to her or not. I never talked to her or anybody from either the Department of Justice, the Department of Interior, or Sarah Davis, or anybody from her office. So I don't know what she thought about it. I mean, I just know what they tried to intervene.
Yeah. And the fact that, I guess, so the initial motion to intervene, that was a hearing that some of us were able to attend, and it was denied. But then eventually Sarah Davis retired, another guy took her spot, and then my understanding is that Yellowstone still did not want Jack to release the spot where it was.
Yeah, I never talked to them, so I don't know.
Is my understanding, though, that Yellowstone doesn't care if the searchers believe it? I mean, we can believe whatever we want. It's just that Jack nor the Fenn estate can say exactly where it was. Is that the predicament the search community is in?
I have no idea. I mean, I like I said, I haven't talked to anybody who is an employee of Yellowstone. The only dealings I had with, I think her name was Kimberly Bell, were related to that intervention, and so I haven't talked to anybody since. So I don't know what their position is generally about what they think. Yeah. I mean, all I know is what they put in that motion, and what they said at the hearing, and I had very few conversations with Kimberly Bell other than to say I was willing to. I mean, I would say the conversations I had with her were, I'll put Josh's deposition off so you can file whatever you're going to file. So I did that a couple of times, and but honestly, Cynthia, I don't know what their position is personally.
Well, I have a Sarah Davis on speed dial. Do you want me to call her? And we'll talk to her right here in your backyard.
Yeah, well, if she's got any brains, she won't pick up the phone.
Yes, I'm sure that if she sees that it's from a Cynthia, it's like, no, that girl's crazy.
Did you ever talk to her?
No, but I tried to.
Yeah.
When I was in Yellowstone, the last time I was there, and she hadn't retired yet. And I actually went to Mammoth Hot Springs.
Is that where her office was?
That's where the office is.
Is that in Montana, or is that in Wyoming?
No, it's still on the Wyoming side. It's right before. Yeah, because Mammoth is still in Wyoming. It's real close to the border. Okay. But yeah, it's still in the Wyoming side.
It's in the north part of the park. I've never been to Yellowstone, so I don't know.
I know. Yeah, but aren't we going to 9 Mile Hole next week? That's a joke, everybody. I'm kidding. We're not. Yeah. No, seriously, I did. I drove there and I went right up to the door, and you couldn't. It was locked. Thank goodness. Security is really, really good at a lot of federal places, and I was so happy to see. I mean, this is the headquarters of Yellowstone National Park. That's where I went, and the door was locked. You had to have a key card to get in, and then there was like a keypad where you could call a number. Like if you knew someone that worked there, I think there was a keypad that you could actually call them, and then they could let you in or whatever. But yeah, it was really, really secure, which thank God. Yeah. All the crazy searches out there all these years, thank God that they were safe.
I'm sure she got a few knocks at the doors.
Yeah, and if you call the number, it's just a generic number, and you still need to know I couldn't get a hold of her even on the phone, so it's like, whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. So, well, thank you, Karl, for talking to me.
You're welcome. And, you're welcome. It's been an interesting journey.
It has been a great journey.
And I'm certain that the Forest's family is glad that it is coming to an end.